A warm welcome again to Feeling Terrific. Today I have, as always, another special guest. He is Bernhard Schaechtele, and I hope it's okay to call you that.
Sure. Thank you for having me here, Christian. Very happy.
Perfect. Yeah. So you're wondering what we are talking about today. So we will talk about his journey to the soft industry, and it's quite a Hollywood story. So stay tuned. It's really interesting from different perspectives, right? And as mentioned already, thank you for your time, Bernie, and hope to have great insight.
Happy to be here.
Perfect. Yeah, maybe let's start with a very important question in the beginning, right? So who are we and how are we connected, or also how we did met? Maybe that's also quite a good intro to the whole topic per se.
Sure. Should I start or do you want to?
Go for it.
All right. So, hi everyone. As Christian already said, I'm Berni, nickname for Bernhard. So my real name is Bernhard Schaechtele, but Christian calls me Berni. That's totally fine. I work as a customer success manager for Adobe. But as Christian already said, I have a quite uncommon background. So we will talk about this in a few minutes, I guess. The most important thing about me is that I live in Munich. I'm a passionate hiker. I'm a passionate dancer. So this is something I really enjoy in my private life. But from a professional perspective, the key word in my career is communication, and this is everything I'm most interested in.
Perfect. Yeah, then I would say let's take it right from there, right? So you started in the gastronomy, right? And I think communication is quite a key element in that. But why did you start there in the first place?
Yeah, back then it was quite easy decision for me because I was not used to any kind of business I want to grow up in. So I didn't know where to start my career. So I knew that I always wanted to work in a workplace which is all about communication. I wanted to work with people. So I was sure that I don't want to sit in front of a PC or something. So I wanted to have people around me, working with people, working with customers. And that was the reason why I then decided to start my career in the gastronomy, specifically in the hotel business.
And why especially in the hotel business?
Because from a working perspective, it's very diverse there. So you have not only a bar where you work in, but you really have different departments where you then can learn more and more from everyone. So I was working in the room service as well as in the restaurant, but I also worked in the flower department, which was quite interesting as well.
That I didn't know.
So you learn a lot of things you can also adapt in your private life. So this was quite cool for me.
Yeah. So you also mentioned or already mentioned one thing you learned, especially right communication and so on. But how did this experience sharpen you, or what kind of impact did it have on you?
You mean specifically in the gastronomy business?
Yes, so the experience from the gastronomy business, but also when it comes, for example, being in the hotel and having the different perspectives. How did this experience sharpen you to the person as you are today?
Yeah. So one of the most important learnings was that I am always talking to a person that is in front of me. So, you know, in a hotel like Bayerischer Hof, where I did my training period, you also talk to very public persons like actors, like politicians or something. But you quickly learn that these are also just persons as you are, or as a simple guest you probably don't know. So every person that is in front of you is a human being, just like yourself. You don't have to be afraid of that person. That person as well wants to communicate with you. And the main key learning was that I don't have to be afraid of any person that is in front of me, no matter whether it's a CEO or an operational guy. So always communicate friendly and professional, and just how you communicate. So be authentic.
Yeah. Do you have an example, or can you remember of a situation where you, were being confronted with kind of a public person, right? And how did you? I mean, you just mentioned it, right? That you, were able, or that you have to be aware that they are also just kind of humans, right? Do you have an example where you felt the switch in your head, kind of?
Yes. Both positive and negative. So I of course, I'm not allowed to talk about any names, but there was a situation when there was an actor, a guest of mine in a bar, which I always thought was a cool actor in my perspective. But then I really experienced that this person was not as nice in real life as I expected. But I, of course, had to stay professional and be in my positive Berni mood, just like I am with other people when I'm that are more nicer to me. But specifically when I was talking to a president of a country, which was really interesting, and I really learned and experienced that this person was just on the was just grounded as I am. So he was really talking eye to eye level with me. So not only me seeing him as a human being, he just saw me as a eye to eye level person as he is, even though he was the president of a country. And this was very interesting for me, experiencing this from the other side. So from my opposite, but also for me personally, I was feeling safe in this environment as well. So this was quite interesting for me.
Yeah. No, I think feeling safe is a very important baseline, right? But I also guess at this point of time, you didn't have a watch with a heart rate monitor, right? When you were talking to the president.
No.
Perfect. So what I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, right? But during the time in the gastronomy, but also when it comes to your current job as a customer success manager, right? I think, attitude, maybe it's a buzzword, maybe it's not. Let us know your thoughts. But I think it's quite essential, right? So what are your thoughts about this statement, attitude per se, so that it can be used to stand out, or also then on the other side, the other way around, right? What are your thoughts?
For me personally, attitude is one of the key factors in success and in your, especially in the success of your career, but also in your personal life. You also gather in your private life with people of whom you like your attitude, of whom you like the attitude, I would say. And the same goes for me in the professional life. You prefer working with people you share the attitude with, or you are impressed by the attitude of that person. And for me, personally, looking back, attitude is that key strength that always was part of my journey. And if I remember back, it's really my personality that took me to that spot where I am now, but also the attitude, how I see others and how I want others to be successful. And summarizing it, attitude is a key capability both for personal and professional life.
Yeah. So you mentioned just kind of the perspective on the positive side, right? But do you have an example of a situation where your attitude was quite harmful?
Yes. Too
so
much
now
of
the
them.
Self-reflection part
Too much of them, to be honest. But I always try to switch those negative experiences into a positive point of view. So I try to learn from it. But the one of the key issues I am having with my attitude is that if I'm passionate about something, both personal or professional life, I totally deep into it, and this leads me to often to the situation that I forgot about my own about my own how you say about my own person. So I tend to overload myself. Keyword recharging is something I definitely have to learn. So specifically a situation, if I have to mention a special situation, I can use a special habit I'm doing, that I'm doing too much instead of looking at myself and putting the resources into a project that are necessary, and then have the time to recharge your person. But I really tend to put too much into it and then get weak out of the situation. And this is something I definitely have to learn.
Yeah. So I would say recharging is quite an interesting topic, right?
Yeah,
what is your approach
absolutely.
to improve that?
My approach to improve that? Good question, Christian. Thank you. Currently, I tend to recharge by being active. So I'm doing sports and go hiking. But the approach, how I want to improve specifically in recharging, is that I try to be more self-reflectant and really identify the triggers that are important to see that I have to recharge now. So identifying my personal mood and my triggers that say, hey, Bernie, please slow down. This is something I'm currently trying to improve.
Yeah. No,
if I answer your question with this.
You do answer the question. So
Okay.
thank you for sharing your thoughts on this one. Maybe let's dig right into the topic of the title kind of thing, right? So I already mentioned, but you also mentioned it also. So you moved from the gastronomy to the software industry, right? But maybe let's put or add another perspective: gastronomy, fitness coach, and then software industry. So
yes,
what's happening?
What's happening? So I was quite a good football player in my youth, I would say. So sports was always part of my life. And that was the reason why I also wanted to have a sports job at some point of time. So I wanted to get into the health industry, sports industry, which was the reason why I studied health care management. And by doing this, I started as a gym coach in a gym center, a health center, where I did back trainings with persons. And that was back then quite an interesting step for me, coming from the gastronomy, because then I had to I jumped into a total new business, even though I was sporty in my youth. But it was also a good decision, because looking to the present, it led me to the situation where I'm now.
And how did that happen?
How did that happen? Quite interesting, because I was working in the health industry for almost 7 years, so quite a time. And then the coincidence happened that I was writing my master thesis, and I wanted to have some kind of a change, to have more time capacity to write my master thesis, because I was writing it with a professional football club, and it was super interesting for me. And then the coincidence happened that one of my customers in the gym just asked me what I wanted to do in the future and whether I can imagine working in the software business, and which was a question I was never expecting at this point of time. And I was just interested, open, and said, yes, why not? And then we got in contact together.
Yeah. I guess sometimes you just have to be, or you just have to have the courage, right? And to be open for something new, which you haven't experienced so far, I would say. So
totally agree. And also, if I am allowed to
sure.
say this, because it's a perfect match to the topic we are talking right now, because talking about attitude, that was the key capability that it was a manager of a software company, my customer there. And she saw this, and that was the key sentence she said to me, "Hey, Berni, I experienced you working with me as a customer, and I feel totally comfortable with you." And she saw that my main goal was her success, getting healthy, getting strong. And she said, "Hey, Berni, all these professional skills and this knowledge about technology you can learn in the future, but this attitude and how to be empathetic with people, you have from your birth on, so to say." And she said, either you have it or you don't, and you have it. And that was the reason why she thought I could be successful in the software business. And that's really something interesting for me, that she saw this, and I'm really impressed by her skills in these terms.
Yeah.
Seeing this.
Yeah. So when you would ask me, I mean, I think a manager nowadays in whatever kind of industry, I mean, for some industries more, for others less, right? But especially for the software industry, you have to be that open-minded, right? And you have to also take risks, right? I mean, either it could work out or not. But being aware of the current situation of the employee market and so on, it's just the right direction. There's just one direction. So maybe another question. So when you started at Adobe, right, being in that role, how were you received by the colleagues? I mean, obviously they saw your LinkedIn profile, right? They saw the history, and I don't know what your manager was making kind of an intro regarding you to the team, but how were you received with this kind of non-traditional background?
Also a good question, where I luckily can only talk about positive experiences, especially joining the software business in a company like Adobe it was tough for me because I didn't know anything for me personally, so I had to learn and grow and develop. But especially from a personal perspective, it was very inclusive. So everyone was totally interested in me, specifically from my background in the health industry. So everyone wanted to learn more how they can stay healthy in their job and so on. So this was a door opener for me to communicate with everyone.
Maybe an idea for a side business, just saying.
Maybe, yeah. But from a software point of view, it was, of course, challenging for me being in this environment where all these software keywords are dropped. I didn't know anything about the software business back then, but I was lucky enough to have a great mentor who told me, "Hey, Berni, I know that this is Chinese for you. You don't understand anything. Just write down what you don't understand." And we both go through the list in our weekly one-on-ones, and that was super helpful. So having a good mentor was the key of success for me.
Yeah. If we have a look now on your maybe we are on your LinkedIn profile and we see the history in the soft industry so far, right? So you started at Adobe, then moving to a startup, being there or becoming there also a team lead, right? And now being back at Adobe. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that you were and are quite successful, right? I mean, it's one thing to become successful, but keeping on that level, especially also moving higher, right? What would you say? Yeah. Why has that happened to you, or why did you have made this whole experience? What would you say?
I think just like in private life, being open and being focused on your development is the key why I am confident enough today to say I'm successful. Yeah. So I never slammed a door because I didn't like a situation or something was too challenging, or I don't know. But I was always having an open mind and testing something out and being open to learn from a situation you're not used to now yet is the key why I'm successful, I think. If that answers your question, I don't know if I got it correctly.
Yeah, no, it does. It does.
Okay.
So thank you for that. I mean, maybe last question regarding this. On your first day, right, with the experience and etc., right? How did you feel?
On my first day, super nervous. I was totally excited because, especially Adobe is a huge enterprise and everyone knows Adobe. And for me, it was super exciting to start in a company like this because back then I was working in a hotel. I was having side jobs in a bar. I was working in the health industry, working as a gym coach. And now being part of such a huge enterprise was something completely new to me and a completely new business where I don't know anything about. That was something I didn't have any expectation how I should be able to solve this. So I was super nervous, but it worked out.
And we are lucky that it worked out. So we talked about the transition and so on, right? But starting even prior to the healthcare industry, right? Starting in the gastronomy, and then obviously also the experience in the healthcare industry, but the experience you gained prior to the soft industry, how did that, I mean, you also already mentioned it kind of thing, but how did this help you or shaped you and,
Yeah, I think especially the time in the gastronomy was really a key point in my professional life because, just playing football in the youth and being in school, I was not the best in school. I didn't have any kind of interest in my professional future, to be honest, back then. So starting in the gastronomy showed me, hey, I really had to stay focused to be successful, to do a good job. So this was something that completely switched then in my view of my career. So I started to see, hey, stay focused, do something, and then you're successful. And you also are more successful than others if you do your job how it should be. So if you really deep dive into it. But especially as I already said in the beginning, the communication part was really super valuable for me. So learning to speak with every kind of person eye to eye, not having a distance or being shy, but really go open to a person and ask questions, especially. So this is something I definitely learned during my time in gastronomy, and which is super valuable now for my time at Adobe or in the software business in general.
Would you move to the soft industry again? So would you do it again?
100% yes. I couldn't imagine to work for the software industry back then, to be honest. So I never saw myself.
Did you have cliches, or why was that?
No, because I was just not. I couldn't imagine myself working in such a business because I hated computers back then, and that was a cliche, most likely, because I thought those kind of people would only work in front of a laptop and so on and so on. And then, look, with my point of view today, I would say 100% yes, I would rejoin the software business, because I was totally impressed by the diversity of people that work in the software business, and that sometimes I get asked by friends why I'm in the software business and what that has to do with my previous jobs. And even though I worked in 3 completely different businesses, so gastronomy, healthcare management, and software business, of course I have different tasks and a different environment I'm working in, but the key thing of my role stayed the same, that I always have the success of my customers as my main goal, and communication is the key to it. So somehow it's always related, and that's something I know now.
Yeah. And congratulations for that kind of enlightenment, I would say. Because it's also a journey reaching that, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe let's take a different perspective, right? Would you consider moving out of the software industry one day?
Good question, Christian. I would say yes. So I'm not forcing it. I'm not looking for it right now, but I can imagine that at some point of time I might also leave the software business. But only if it suits to my situation. So I'm as you experienced, I wouldn't be in the software business if I wouldn't be that open to new opportunities. But if I think about myself, what I can imagine is working in some social environment at some point of time, but that's really future looking.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing your thoughts regarding this one. Maybe let's have another look on your journey in the software industry so far, right? Mm-hmm. You started at Adobe, and then, as already mentioned, you moved to a startup. Why? What was your thought process behind?
Back then it was quite a challenging situation for me, because I switched right in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and it was a decision for my personal growth, I would say, but also it was from a company point of view a challenging time back then. So both Adobe, you have to know, I started at Adobe back then as a temporary worker. And then there was this end of this temporary contract, and no one knew back then how the situation would develop. So how will the business develop during this time? So you remember yourself, it was a total blurry situation for everyone. But back then I decided that I want to have a change, and then I looked for new opportunities, and I specifically looked for smaller companies, just because I heard a lot about startups, and I wanted to get out of my comfort zone because at this time at Adobe, I was quite cozy. I knew what I can, and I knew the people to get support from. So I knew where to get support if I needed something, but I wanted to get into a completely new environment to challenge myself again. Yeah.
Yeah. So getting out of your comfort zone, congratulations. That's the perfect right mindset. I would say.
It's your key sentence.
kind of. But when you move from a big corporate, right, to a startup,
yeah.
Did you also, or what kind of change did you see regarding your mind or mindset?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to adapt? Did you have to evolve? What was the situation?
So I started at the startup eBot7. It's called, and I was lucky enough to have people around me there that have a kind of a similar attitude. So everyone wanted to grow, everyone wanted to develop, everyone was that open-minded. So it was easy from a attitude point of view, but it was super challenging from a knowledge point of view. So because at Adobe, it was my first step into the software business, and I then was used to Adobe, but then this startup that was developing artificial intelligence, which was a completely different technology now. And I didn't have the situation now that I have a mentor who was answering all my questions and so on, but I had to grow on my own. And this was something that was super challenging because now I not only had to be open to all the different new persons, but also be open to technology. And we will talk about this, I guess, but it was a great decision for me because I developed my technology knowledge because of that. And yeah, but that was the most challenging part, not the people thing, because everyone was open as I was, but the growing into the technology and expanding your knowledge around your role, in a huge enterprise, you have your role and you're responsible for this, but in a startup, you're doing everything.
You have to broaden up, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So also in your startup time, you've become a team lead, right? How?
Right.
And the experience you gained with having, the mentor during your Adobe times, right? What kind of influence did that have on your leadership style?
Did I understand you correctly? Related to the mentor I had back then?
Yes, I'm just wondering, so you had the mentor during your Adobe times, and obviously you were quite grateful and thankful and etc., right?
Yes.
What kind of impact does this experience have on your approach to leadership in this team lead role?
Huge impact. So I did the same approach back then because I also had people in my team in this startup that were working in completely different businesses before. So I had someone from from the fashion industry joining my team, and that person was totally new to all these buzzwords and whatever in the software business. So I did the same approach with her as my mentor did with me. So collecting things she didn't understand and go through it in my weeklies. But especially also that manager that hired me back then in Adobe had a huge impact on my leadership. Because I also wanted to see the attitude and the personality of a person in my team, and not only the professional knowledge. So yes, my mentor and my previous manager had a huge impact on my leadership style.
Yeah. So now I would say that the majority of people do have kind of the old school mindset when it comes to careers, right? So from my perspective, it's all about career portfolio kind of thing. So it doesn't really matter if you have been an individual contributor, then a manager, then being back to an IC or whatsoever, right? Different industries and so on. You can just grow as a person, and with that per se, then also directly in a professional from a professional point of view, right? But I'm wondering, what are your thoughts, or what did you think when you were moving from an individual contributor role to a manager role and then back to an IC role?
For me, it was on purpose, to be honest. That was also a question in my hiring, in my second hiring with Adobe when I rejoined the company, because they were also asking me, hey, Berni, how is it for you now changing from a leadership role into an individual contributor role again? And I said that I expected this question, and it's really on purpose for me, because during my leadership time, I had a lot of learnings. I also had fun being a team lead. I enjoyed it, but for me at this point of time, I see myself as an individual contributor, and I have the feeling that I can be more successful in this role. For me personally, I love the collaboration with customers, and I had to be in that team lead role to identify for myself that at this point of time and age, I want to be an individual contributor. So I forced it to get in such a role back again.
Yeah. So regarding your startup time, right? So what did you learn during this time? And also, would you do the move again from a corporate to a startup? So would you do it again, basically?
Looking back, I would definitely do it again, yes, because it was super valuable. And to be honest, I wouldn't be that. I had a lot of experiences then. I wouldn't be that professional, I would say, now as I would be if I just would have stayed back then with Adobe. So for me, it was a huge step in growth. So yes, I would definitely do it again. If I would do it now, I don't know, depending on the situation you're in. So currently I wouldn't switch, but looking back, I would definitely do it again because I benefit from it. But you asked about the main things I learned. Have I correctly in my mind? Okay.
You are absolutely right.
One key thing which I already mentioned was the technical knowledge development, because I had to learn everything, and not only my customer success specific role, because I was in direct contact with the IT of the company as well. So I had to learn this technical stuff. That was super valuable for me. But secondly, also, if you work for a company like Adobe, you just have to say, I'm a customer success manager for Adobe, and everyone knows which company you're talking about and what products you're. Do you still hear me, Christian?
I can still hear you.
Okay, because my earbuds lost the accu, I think. But if you work for a small company, no one knows that company, and then you're in a completely different position of pitching the solution and of build a different position of building trust with the customer, because the customer knows Adobe and they know that's a great company producing great solutions, but working for a company that people don't know, you really have to learn how to build trust from scratch. And this is something which I really found from my point of view was very valuable for my development.
Yeah, no, I see we have definitely another topic for another episode, right? So trust in the software industry and so on. So we'll see what time will tell, right? But maybe from a more general point of view, right? So nowadays there are a lot of layoffs happening, and also in regards to that. But I mean, per se, boomerangs. Maybe that's kind of a new word. I'll explain it in a little bit. Boomerangs are quite important for companies, right? So boomerangs are people who left their company and rejoining, right? So from a general point of view, why did you consider, or why would you consider coming back to a company you left from an individual point of view?
Funny enough, we had at Adobe a reoccurring meeting series called Cafe Central, where I was also invited as a guest to talk about specifically that point. Why did I rejoin? And to be honest, as I said, it was back then the decision for my personal growth, but I always appreciated working for Adobe, and especially also during my time at the startup, I recognized the benefits of working for such a bigger enterprise, and how you also can grow and develop in such an environment. And so I rejoined because I think Adobe is a cool brand, to be honest. I also feel that my attitude and my style of working is appreciated there. And especially that inclusion part is something I really am now looking for in a company. So if I had to decide for a company, I always go for this inclusion part as well, because it's a very important topic also from my personal point of view in my private life. So these were reasons why I rejoined. And it was just, I also said to my manager, it was just coming back home, because everyone still knew me and everyone was totally saying hello with open arms. And
yeah. No, thank you for sharing your thoughts, but now I need a tissue.
Go for it.
No, but I really like the phrase. It feels like coming home. And I think when you can say that, it really means something, right? And whatever the company is, but it does take something to be able to say this. So I'm happy for you that you have or that you are in the kind of situation where you can say that.
Yeah, and I think those kudos go to both sides. So I think from my point of view, of course, kudos to Adobe that I feel that home there, but also being self-confident, kudos to myself that a company is also willing to is also willing to take me back. And also I also contribute to that relationship that I feel there like home. So this is also something I learned now since I rejoined.
No, definitely. And I mean, I'm a recruiter, right? I work with hiring managers quite closely. And one thing I can say, definitely, is that once someone is being considered for being a boomerang or whatever you want to use as a name, it means something, right? Because the companies in the software industry are quite selective when it comes to that piece. So, So I just want to underline your comment.
Now I need a tissue.
Yes, I did it. I mean, the hiring process, it's such a move isn't happening overnight, right? So it takes a little bit of time. how did they react how did Adobe react kind of thing when they were becoming aware of your interest in rejoining, or in general your openness to think about something new?
That was a perfect experience, to be honest. It was such a smooth process, because I was approached beginning of last year, and once my hiring manager heard that, she was super happy, and she was super happy talking to me, because we had a very good relationship in my previous time at Adobe. So it was just like my first day now, my second first day now at Adobe. Everyone was super open, both the HR, but also the customer success team and my hiring manager. And it was very comfortable from a hiring perspective. And also what I was totally impressed about, it was a very quick process. So it went quite quick for such a huge company, yeah, because I know the processes now as well.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, it can be quick, right? Under specific circumstances, but yeah. Maybe last question from my side. We already scratched a few words, yeah, but let's see your thoughts, right? So self-awareness, self-reflection, mental health, recharging, and purpose. Buzzword bingo or what?
From my personal point of view, key capabilities to be successful, to be honest, because I see it just like my hiring manager at the first time, who hired me from the gym. You can learn the professional part, you can learn the technical stuff, but this attitude you have or you don't have. And self-reflection especially is key for me personally to grow. I always try to self-reflect to learn from situations, or also to see what was successful. That's also important. Not only what can be improved, but also identifying what was successful. And you mentioned now not a buzzword, but really a key capability I am focusing now on, recharging and focusing on my strengths and capabilities. So key capabilities to success. No buzzwords.
Okay, so then we also clarified that. Yeah, for the last words, I would like to hand it over to you.
You mean what's missing?
No, not necessarily what's missing.
Yeah.
It's also on purpose, right? That there's
I know
that question, no direction. I just want to hand it over to you for the last words.
Okay, the famous last words. Famous last words. First of all, thank you, Christian, for having me as a guest. I totally appreciate being in your podcast, because I follow it and I feel terrific.
That's great.
But I was also happy about talking about this topic, and this is something I really want to encourage everyone to be authentic. Be your authentic self, and don't force yourself into any role or into that you have to know something, but you can learn it. And if you know your own strengths, you can be successful no matter in which business you are working, or how much of professional knowledge you already have gained. So I just want to encourage everyone, be authentic, and especially stay open. So don't close doors before you don't know what's behind it.
thank you for your last words. And also thank you for your time, Berni. We are at the end of our conversation. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Christian. I'm looking forward to our next meeting.
Take care. Bye.
And thank you for having me as a guest.
It was my pleasure. Bye.
Bye, Christian. Bye, everyone.